Hello, and welcome to another Peace Vigil essay. Today, Samir Dosani is going to discuss Wahhabi philosophy and the Saudi Arabian state. Samir Dosani is a graduate of McGill University, Montreal, Canada, where he majored in religious studies.
What do you think of when you think of Islam? Most people, especially most non-Muslims, but an increasing number of Muslims, associate values of intolerance and control over women's bodies with Islam. Why is that? The holiest cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina, are controlled by the Saudi government, who regulate rituals around those cities carefully and in accordance with their own interpretation of Islam. That interpretation comes from the philosophy of a man called Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, an iconoclastic 18th century theologian who hated many of the Muslim practices of his day. He was not a very successful theologian, and his work would probably be insignificant today had it not been for an alliance he struck with a ruler called Muhammad bin Saud, a warlord whose descendants would eventually rule Saudi Arabia after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in the early 20th century. Today, very few Muslims, maybe 1 or 2%, would self-identify as Wahhabis. Around the same time that the House of Saud came to power, oil was discovered in Saudi Arabia. The oil gave the Saudi government an immense amount of wealth. It's in the 10 richest countries by GDP per person by most estimates. But a lot of that money is not invested in improving living conditions for people in Saudi Arabia. Hence, Saudi Arabia ranks much lower on things like the UN's Human Development Index. Some of that money goes into promoting the Wahhabi version of Islam throughout the Muslim world and beyond. Why is that a bad thing? The answer depends on whether or not you're a Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, it's obviously a bad thing, because at the heart of the Wahhabi teaching is intolerance and religious extremism. But even for Muslims, the kind of doctrines being pushed by Saudi Arabia were rejected by nearly all scholars of nearly all the religious schools. As I said, Abdul Wahhab was not seen as a very good scholar in his day, and his teachings were largely rejected. The tenets of Wahhabism and other similar doctrines revolve around one thing: compulsion. A woman is forbidden from driving, people are compelled to worship a certain way, and forbidden from worshiping in others. At times, communities are compelled to convert on pain of death. For believing Muslims, it's hard to see how this is not a violation of chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran, which states, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." Those who compel others to follow their religion are in violation of a clear mandate from the Quran. The Quran also teaches that human diversity is a divine mercy, and those who aim to create a single Muslim community out of a diverse planet go against God's will. Chapter 5, verse 48 states, "We have appointed a law and a practice for every one of you." Had God willed, he would have made you a single community, but he wanted to test you regarding what has come to you. So compete with each other in doing good. Every one of you will return to God, and he will inform you regarding the things about which you differed. Nearly all Wahhabis believe that they, not just God, have the right to inform you about where you differ from them. And by that, they generally mean they have the right to inform you about why you are going to hell. Wahhabism was born as one of several revivalist movements in the time of fading Muslim empires. Though the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal empires still existed in the 18th century, they were losing steam and slowly losing control to European colonialists. Wahhabism and similar religious movements theorized that the Muslim Ummah had gone astray, and that God was punishing them for their sins by sending Europeans to destroy them. The only way to save themselves was to return to the true religion of the past, generally meant the society of the Prophet Muhammad and the 4 rightly guided caliphs. While that society was no doubt a patriarchal society, it was also a society in which a woman named Khadija could run her own business. She could also employ men much younger than her, and even marry one of them, a man who Muslims call the Prophet of Islam. Khadija was the Prophet's only wife until her death. The early Muslim community was also a society in which the Prophet's second wife, Aisha, could lead an army into war, famously while riding a camel. How many of today's societies have women political or military leaders like that? But the society that Wahhabis argue for is one in which women are distinctly second-class citizens. They can neither vote, nor drive, nor be seen in public, nor travel anywhere without a man. Though some of these policies are being changed, reformists are fighting an uphill battle against the entrenched clergy, who argue that Islam doesn't give women these rights. Modern Saudi Arabia would have no place for women like Khadija or Aisha, and for this reason alone their claim to be bringing back the ethos and values of the earliest Muslims does not hold up. If one accepts the principles that we should not judge others for their beliefs, then perhaps we should accept that Wahhabism is an authentic Muslim sect like any other. But this is difficult not only because Wahhabis don't accept the validity of every other sect, but also because some of their core beliefs seem to defy their own rhetoric. Early Muslim rulers would never claim the title of king. Malik, Arabic for king, is one of God's 99 names according to Muslims, and to claim it was seen as a sign of arrogance. One big criticism that Wahhabis have with the Shia concept of imamat is that it validates the concept of hereditary leadership. The first Muslim leaders, the four rightly guided caliphs, were chosen for their piety and their closeness to the Prophet, not their birth. Hence, the Shia concept of leadership by birth is a violation of these principles, they argue. Yet the Wahhabis have no issue with the idea of birthright kingship or royal families in their own land. Without the support of the Saudi kingdom, Wahhabis would lose all the worldly power they possess, and it's difficult to think that this isn't the reason they don't speak out against such practices. The more one looks at Wahhabism, the more one concludes it has little to do with Islam and more to do with the history of religious extremism. Extremists of all sorts tend to hate anyone who is different than them. They tend to be fiercely misogynistic, that is, they hate women, and have even less tolerance for people of their own faith who believe the quote-unquote wrong thing. Hence, 100 years ago, the US public was hugely anti-Catholic. This from a fiercely religious Christian country. How different is that from the uncompromising hatred that the entire Saudi leadership has for Shia in general and Iran in particular?
Thanks for listening. These videos take a lot of work, so please let us know that you're watching. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Thanks.